Hello and welcome to another socially relevant episode of Saved by the 90s. My name's Adam Patterson. With me today is a man who never forgets to wash his hands for at least 20 seconds, Ken Bakley. Hey, Ken.
Hello.
With all the insanity happening around the world recently, we thought it might be fun to take a bit of a cinematic journey through current events this month by the way of 4 90s movies that feel oddly and perhaps frighteningly relevant.
You would not believe how fast this episode came together.
It was kind of...
I mean, it was all you, Adam. It was all you that you suggested all these titles. There was one that we had specifically in mind, and then I said, how are we going to come up with the other 3? And you came up with them immediately. So I give, as often, so much the credit for the show working at all to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We begin this journey with a thriller involving a rogue Russian submarine that may be attempting to start a war with the U.S. Directed by John McTiernan and released on March 2nd, 1990, this is The Hunt for Red October.
A great day, comrades.
One of your submarine captains has gone insane.
We sail into history.
He wants to defect.
You're willing to bet your life on that?
See it.
Sean Connery, Alec Baldwin, The Hunt for Red October, rated PG, now playing.
A new technologically superior Soviet sub, the Red October, is heading for the U.S. coast under the command of Captain Marco Ramius. The American government thinks Ramius is planning to attack. A lone CIA analyst has a different idea. He thinks Ramius is planning to defect, but he has only a few hours to find him and prove it because the entire Russian naval and air commands are trying to find him too. Old Jack Ryan action to start this month off.
Yeah.
Are you a Jack Ryan fan? You big Jack Ryan guy?
I'm not a big Jack Ryan guy. I know it, in a broad sense, but yeah, this is good. This is a good movie.
I agree. I like submarine movies. You don't have a lot of...
I'm beginning to realize that I like submarine movies.
There's not too many of them. Out there. I think the other big one, Crimson Tide, I think that's a better one than this, but I think that it's pretty serviceable. I think it's a little odd when it begins because you're seeing like Sean Connery and Sam Neill and they're speaking Russian and you're just like, whoa. Are they gonna?
But they do not have Russian accents.
No, they don't. But at first, because for the first like 5 or 10 minutes of the movie, they're just speaking Russian, and you're like, are they gonna fully commit to this? And then like right after that there's like a conversation that he has with one of the other crew members, and they drop the Russian, and for the rest of the movie they're pretty much speaking English in their regular old accents. Well, Sam Neill tries to do the Russian accent, but it doesn't really work for him. And
you've got to love Connery not even trying.
Yeah, Sean Connery's just like, screw it. He's just like, I'm just going to do my Sean Connery.
Everybody knows what I sound like.
I'm going to do my Sean Connery voice. That's what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm. Sean Connery does a famously great Sean Connery.
He does. It was funny because it's been a while since I've seen a Sean Connery movie. And as I was watching this, all I could think about was like, is he like hamming it up in this movie? Because it seems like he's sort of parodying himself. And I know that's not the case, but it was just because it was so long since I've seen a Sean Connery film. It was kind of fun to go back, and of course he killed it in this too. He was really great in it, and very large cast in this too. You have like Courtney B. Vance in there as Jones, and I barely even with his character, you hear him before you see him. And I was like, oh, there's Courtney B. Vance. And then when they show him, you're just like, whoa, he looks so... he's like
Courtney
a child.
B. Vance?
He's a child.
Yeah.
In this. You have Tim Curry in there also, who I'm pretty sure is almost top billed in this. You have Sean Connery, Alec Baldwin, and then like Tim Curry's like third billed, and he's barely in it. He's not in it too much at all. But of course, he looks very young in this too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The same with Stellan Skarsgård as one of the Russian captains. So overall, I think it's a really fun movie. It's pretty tense, as most submarine movies are.
Mm-hmm.
I like I like Jack Ryan's stuff. I don't know if this is like one of my favorites, but certainly like Clear and Present Danger and Patriot Games I wasn't a big fan of the Sum of All Fears. I think that was the Ben Affleck, Jack Ryan one.
Yeah.
I'm kind of digging the show on Amazon too, the John Krasinski one.
I've heard that's good. I've heard it's good.
I started the second season, but I didn't watch the whole thing. It's good. I just, for whatever reason, had to move on to other things. I'll come back to it. But
on the Wikipedia page for the Jack Ryan character, you under the occupation parameter, you get the obscene list of things that he's become in the Tom Clancy novels. President, Vice President, National Security Advisor, Deputy Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA Acting Deputy Director for Intelligence, CIA Special Assistant to the DDI, CIA Analyst, Professor, U.S. Naval Academy, Certified Public Accountant, Stockbroker, and Marine Corps Second Lieutenant.
Wow. That is an impressive resume for Mr. Ryan. I mean,
I definitely read that in the wrong order that you're supposed to read. My base is supposed to read it going up and leading to president, but
I like the idea of him starting as president.
And then ending as a certified public accountant.
Yeah. I like that. It's a good character. It's a very malleable character. I think that Jack Ryan is a character. He's almost an everyman, but you can sort of mold him into whatever you need him to be in any given story. Like in this movie, he just happened to know a whole lot about ships and submarines and stuff like that. Like he seemed to know more than some of the captains that he interacted with.
Yes, and we're so fortunate, and they're so fortunate for him knowing that.
I thought it was interesting that this was rated PG. I sort of, when we were putting the list together, I was like, is that right? Is this really PG rated? And sure enough, it is. It's long, but I was kind of surprised.
It's a good kind of long, though. You know, I did make some joke to you, as I tend to do when a lot of our movies that we're viewing in a given month are over 2 hours. I'll like make some joke about that to you. This is a very nice long movie. It is nice that it is that long. It wears 135 minutes very well.
Yeah, I think that certainly the pace is very, very good in this. There are very few lulls, and I think that everything is very evenly paced. It starts with, Sean Connery and his crew taking the submarine, the Red October, out. So, I mean, there's very little setup involved. It just, all of a sudden, they're just taking this new super sub out and about, and it just kind of kicks off. There's not a lot of time spent like introducing Jack Ryan and his life and all of this stuff. It sort of gets right into the meat of it. And I think it does it in a very sort of organic way where it doesn't feel rushed, but it doesn't feel like there's too much setup going on either.
Yeah, and it's a pace that's reasonable, but it's a pace that's at such a point where you can't even begin to fathom a 135-minute like studio blockbuster of today being paced like this.
Especially when there are really few like action set pieces in this. Like you're not having these big, bombastic action moments where there's lots of explosions and stuff. I mean, there are thrilling moments, certainly. There's a shootout that occurs. There's, some torpedoing that's going on, but very few like big,
it's almost
set pieces.
Incidental in a way. Like it's just part of what's happening rather than the focus of it, which is, since we're in this current like age of what like an action movie looks like, or what like a movie like this is supposed to look like, it feels very strange to experience that.
This seems to be based on maybe not a true story, but a hearsay, or I guess maybe some sort of legend or conspiracy theory or something involving this. According to the opening crawl, I didn't really look into the supposed true story behind this, but according to the opening crawl, it's just like, maybe this happened in real life. Everybody denies it, but it seems that a lot of people think this did happen.
I would imagine it's about as based on true events as the famous documentary The Blair Witch Project is.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite trivia items that I encounter while reading about this movie is that it comes out in March 1990, when the Cold War is essentially almost over by that point. So what the thing that I read makes it sound like is that when they add that title card that says it's set in November of 1984, that was just to cover for that. Like otherwise, it was supposed to be set in the present time, in the contemporary time of its release. But by the time it came out, its own setting was largely outdated.
Well, when you see it, it doesn't feel like 1984 to me, at least, at all. It felt.
Yeah, they had to backdate it to a like particularly tense period of like the late part of the Cold War.
Yeah. But when you see it, this movie does not scream 1984 to you at all. It feels, even though it was 90, it didn't really feel like an 80s movie. It felt more like a 90s movie to me, at least. And
it was not supposed to be set in 1984, is my understanding.
Right. Either way, I thought it was a pretty good time. Again, I'm still a little partial to Crimson Tide, but this one's still pretty solid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I enjoyed this. As we chose this, I guess, to represent in some way the concept of Russian interference.
I thought it was fun. So of course, Jack Ryan, he comes up with this great scheme. He knows almost immediately that they're looking to defect, even though there's like no indication of it. And I'm wondering, like, what did Sean Connery, his character, like, how was he thinking this would play out? Because if Jack Ryan wasn't involved, they'd all be dead. They would just straight up be dead.
Yeah. No, it's very lucky that they have the most qualified president, vice president, CIA director, the acting deputy director for intelligence, special assistant to the DDI, CIA analyst, U.S. Naval Academy professor, accountant, stockbroker, and second lieutenant in the Marine Corps in history to figure that out.
I wonder how old he was by the time he hit president, because that's a lot of careers.
My vague recollection is that, not having read any of the Clancy books at all, but just vaguely knowing, like reading like the Wikipedia page of the character, I believe he's supposed to become president amidst some kind of crisis. Like he like is vice president and then like succeeds after some kind of tragedy.
I don't know. I think I still prefer the Ford Jack Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's still my preferred portrayal, but the Baldwin Ryan was fine too.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Next up, we transition from Russian meddling to a presidential election with an adaptation of the book.
What an idea for those! What a magical idea for those to be separate and not like the same complete nightmare of unraveling democracy.
Mm-hmm. This is an adaptation of the book chronicling the 1992 campaign of Bill Clinton, directed by Mike.
Oh, it's obviously not. The character names are all different.
It's completely different.
Yeah.
You're crazy if you think there's any similarities. This is directed by Mike Nichols and released on March 20th, 1998. This is Primary Colors.
From Mike Nichols, director of The Birdcage, comes the story of a man
Hi, darling.
who said yes to destiny,
I'm gonna win this thing.
but couldn't say no
Apple fritter?
Honey, please, popcorn.
to anything else.
Governor Jack Stanton seduced me. I do not have time for ineptitude.
This has to be handled just right.
Just right.
John Travolta,
What's he governor of again?
Emma Thompson.
Does this guy have a chance in hell?
No.
Primary Colors, rated R, starts March 20th.
In this adaptation of a best-selling book that may or may not be about Bill Clinton's 1992 run for the White House, the young and gifted Henry Burton is tapped to oversee the presidential campaign of Arkansas Governor Jack Stanton. Burton is pulled into the politician's colorful world and looks on as Stanton contends with his ambitious wife, Susan, and outspoken advisor, Richard Jemmons. So, Adam, what do you think about the Mike Nichols directed, and I want to say right from the start, the Elaine May written, the great Elaine May, Primary Colors?
It's fine. I thought it was fine. I never saw this before.
Nichols and May.
Yeah, Nichols and May. I never saw this before. This was a first time watch for me. I remember when this came out, and it was the talk of the town when this first came out, and I didn't really have too much of an interest in it back then. Same with I think Bulworth came out around this time.
I love Bulworth
too, and I
haven't seen it in a while, but I remember it being great.
And I remember I didn't really have much of an interest in Bulworth either. But so rewatching or watching this for the first time now, I thought it was fine. I thought that there were some funny moments. It felt very reminiscent of what we would see later in shows like Veep or in the loop or this stuff that Armando Iannucci would do, like these sort of political comedies, or even like what Adam McKay is doing now. I think that in a lot of ways this was sort of like a precursor to that, where it had a lot of
I mean, if you mention like it influencing the broader work of Adam McKay, then it makes it sound like this movie had a very negative pop cultural impact.
Yeah, I know, right? But it doesn't it's not structured the same way or anything like that with it.
No,
it's much more straightforward, and it's a pretty standard political comedy. And I thought for the most part it worked. I thought Travolta did a pretty decent job as Jack Stanton. I'm doing air quotes here, Jack Stanton.
Travolta apparently said at the time that he had based his performance off multiple presidents, but mostly Bill Clinton. I don't even know why you throw in multiple other presidents. What on what planet would that even matter?
Yeah, it's just I bet he was saying that just to like cover his own ass about possible like backlash from this,
or maybe even just trying to say, well, it's really a movie about all of politics.
I mean, it was so clear. Every character in this is
there's a direct parallel.
Yeah, you hold a mirror up, and Emma Thompson is Susan Stanton, aka Hillary Clinton, and it was interesting because I think that this may be like the first and last time I ever heard Emma Thompson attempt to do an American accent. And it just did not work for her at all. And I'm like, okay, well, now I can see why she just said, no, I'm not going to do the whole accent thing anymore and just keep my natural accent. Because she was great, but the accent did slip quite a bit.
So many great performances in this.
Oh yeah, I mean, Billy Bob Thornton, who he plays Richard Jemmons, who I'm assuming is James Carville, right?
Absolutely. Like
that had to be. I was wondering
who else would it be?
Like the scene. So like early on, there's a scene when they go to like their campaign headquarters, and Billy Bob Thornton's character like blatantly harasses a female staffer and like unzips his pants and like exposes himself to this female staffer. And I'm like, can that possibly be true? Like I can't see Carville doing that, but I mean,
no. Wow.
They really, I feel like they really made his character more than the others. I feel like it's just straight out of like a Veep character, just a complete caricature.
My takeaway from this, if this is in any way true to the source material, which was the anonymously published book, which was later revealed to be by the Time magazine columnist Joe Klein, if the depiction of like this complete caricature of a human being is in any way what the Klein novel presents the not James Carville out to be, then I would assume that Joe Klein did not come away from covering the 92 campaign with a very positive impression of James Carville.
And then you have Kathy Bates in there in a fantastic role as Libby
She's
Holden.
So good in this. So personally, my answer to this movie is I watched like the first half of it actually in high school in a class that I was taking about like law and government. Great teacher. Like it was like my teacher that I had for a bunch of stuff. One of my very favorite teachers in my entire educational career. But he didn't show us the whole movie because he kind of started showing it to us on a whim. And then he stopped like halfway through after that class period because he forgot how much cursing was in it. And you probably needed a permission slip to screen it. So
yeah,
he told us to finish it on our own time.
It is R-rated.
Yeah. So I hadn't seen the Kathy Bates performance. Well, I think I saw some of it later, but I hadn't seen the Kathy Bates performance like in its entirety until I watched it for this, and she is incredible in it. She is often incredible, but
she had a lot. They gave her a lot to work with. They gave her a few like sort of monologues to work with, and she was fantastic. I think she was nominated for an Academy Award for her performance in this.
Great.
Her character is based on Betsy Wright, who was a consultant, and in the movie she commits suicide. In real life, she did not commit suicide.
Yes. Which makes people wonder, like the whole narrative about like a longtime associate to the candidate becoming disillusioned with politics and eventually taking their own life makes people wonder, think that there was also like that was also the stories like Vince Foster analog as well.
And then you have Adrian Lester in there as Henry Burton, who is the campaign manager, the new campaign manager. Compared to the other like heavy hitters, I felt like his performance was a little a bit lacking in comparison. But
and he's also not given quite as much to do as the other characters because he's very much like the lens of the story. Like you're seeing it mostly through his perspective. Henry Burton is the novel's analog for George Stephanopoulos, a congressional staffer who eventually joins the campaign and becomes over time like a key part of it.
I was wondering because isn't there what's the documentary?
The War Room.
The War Room.
Pennebaker.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of, and that's about Carville and Stephanopoulos, right?
Yeah, I believe
mainly
it's
about the two of them.
Yeah,
yeah. I want to see that. I never saw that. I heard it's incredible. So overall, I thought that this was it was decent. It was too long, I thought. It was just
that like when I mentioned like that that Hunt for Red October was an example of a movie that wore its like roughly 2 hour 20-minute runtime. Well, this is a movie that really doesn't.
Yeah, this is pushing 2.5 hours, and it's just like I was feeling it. I was feeling
like its second
lethargic.
act. It's one of those things where the second act goes on. Where it feels like the space between primaries are happening in real time. Anyway, so I've been watching this movie for about 6 weeks now, and we've now gotten through about 4 state primaries.
And it walks us through all the debates and everything too.
Yes, the debates are all presented in full in real time. They're all 120 minutes.
Visually, I thought it was pretty average, except for one scene which stood out like way above like every other scene in the movie, and it was the scene when he was at the Krispy Kreme, and you have that amazing dolly shot that's just slowly pulling in, and it's like in a parking lot, but the Krispy Kreme is like completely lit up, and what an incredible shot. And that whole scene I thought was a really important scene in the movie too, so I'm glad that they put a lot of emphasis on that scene and specifically that shot, because that sort of wowed me. Whereas the rest of it I thought was just average.
I mean, I thought the movie was pretty robustly shot. I was actually generally on board with it. I thought it was like a pretty nicely shot movie, but of course that one scene does stand out.
Yeah, it's definitely a standout.
Like, yeah, it had been a few years since I had seen like the part of the movie that I saw in school. I'm pretty sure I actually saw the rest of it later, but didn't really make as much of an impression since I was like starting it later, halfway through. But the one thing that I remember clear as day from the first time seeing it is that shot.
I thought it was kind of interesting to see how they were portraying this governor as this sort of, he was not your typical candidate, right? He was not your typical guy. He was more down to earth, more seemingly honest, and he was like not your average politician. He told people, he told it like it was, and I think that's why a lot of people found him to be refreshing. And
like the Bill Clinton of like the 92 campaign is like it's like there's like a weird aura of like political mythology around like what a retail campaigner he was. I mean, it's obviously kind of harrowing and like landmine ridden, and possibly better off not doing it all to try and talk about Bill Clinton in the year 2020. So we're not going to do that. But like in the context of this, I mean, first of all, just in a movie about a campaign, a lot of handshaking that felt like a horror movie right now.
Yeah. There was that whole thing at the beginning where he was going over the different types
like
of
going
handshake.
and shaking everybody's hand and talking like the different handshakes, and I was like, I'm so frightened. And all throughout the movie, of course, every campaign stop, you got to shake everybody's hand.
Yep.
Something you never would have thought about at all until now, and oh my god,
everything is horrifying now. Anytime I'm like I'm watching commercials on TV, and there's things happening in commercials on TV, and I'm just like, oh no, do not.
I'm personally by nature like a handshake person, and I never realized how much I did it until I stopped.
Oh yeah, I mean my big thing is the face touching. Like,
oh yeah, I didn't realize I touched my face 9 trillion times a day until now.
It's horrific, but we'll get more into the that type of stuff in just a minute.
It's like, because I knew that like so many people were like, a lot of people don't like shaking hands, and they were like happy that they don't. But I just realized I kind of do. Like, I think that's like I always consider it like an important part to like begin and end like an interaction.
Mm-hmm.
In the context where you do, where that's like expected. And I didn't realize how much I kind of consider that a part of it until we all stopped doing it. And now I'm like, it's horrifying how much we just like have that level of contact with other people just arbitrarily. Maybe we should do that less going forward. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, who knows? Wherever this goes, we all might be just trained. Like, it might just be ingrained in us to not do that from now on.
Every assumption, we're gonna try and get this episode out as quickly as possible. Recording on Monday the 16th. I don't know. Maybe every assumption we have, every like because you all know, you're listening to this, you all know how completely surreal the past several weeks have been, and how you kind of have this conception in your head about what this feels like and what this looks like. So we're on the Monday, March 16th conception of what this feels and looks like. And of course, it's just a giant fog going forward, except it's going to get worse. But who knows what this... Anyway, by the time it comes out, what our headspaces are regarding this, like the information we know, the way it's impacting us as a society, the way it's going to just completely put a stranglehold in our already deeply, deeply inadequate healthcare system.
Yeah, I mean... What was that? Was it Friday when all that stuff was like hitting like one thing after the other, like the NBA and then the...
Yeah, I think that was like...
Was it
that
Thursday?
Was like Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh, was it?
Through, I feel like. It's hard to tell.
It was like the course of like 3 hours, and like everything just went from bad to so much worse in just that amount of time.
That is like that is like a day that you later go on and say that like you tell stories about that day.
Like, I can just see the
like,
montage.
This is the story that
it's like the Soderbergh montage where it says like day whatever, and then it's like boom, and then they just cut to the NBA closing and cut to the president calling a state of emergency and all this other stuff that's like going on. Oh yeah.
Yeah, like this is the kind of thing where this is the kind of story that people now will bore their grandchildren by telling the stories of this time in the future one day. But what a time.
Yeah, it's crazy. Let's use that as a transition to move on. I will say one last thing about primary colors. Be sure to vote this year, please.
Vote, please vote.
It is so important. It is so vitally important to everyone that you get out there and vote.
If you have a primary coming up in the next few weeks, try and vote by mail instead of going in person.
Yeah, keep an eye on the news and see. I know that today they announced that Ohio was pushing back their primary. So...
Well, they're trying to. I don't know if they've gotten...
there was a motion.
They're going to take it to court. The Louisiana primary was moved to June. Anyway, please vote. This is important. Let's just say, without going into specifics, more than ever, we are seeing the difference between an administration that is prepared and filled with qualified experts and listens to qualified experts on how to manage a crisis, and one that does not. Our third feature, and the inspiration behind this month's theme, concerns the rise of a global pandemic. Released on March 10th, 1995, and directed by Wolfgang Petersen, this is Outbreak.
The virus spreads.
We got 19 dead. We got 100 more infected, spreading like a brush fire.
The panic rises.
260 million Americans will be dead or dying.
The greatest medical crisis in history begins.
There will be panic the likes of which we have never seen.
Dustin Hoffman, Rene Russo, Morgan Freeman.
We can't stop it.
Outbreak, rated R, starts Friday, March 10th at a theater near you.
A deadly airborne virus finds its way into the USA and starts killing people at an epidemic rate. Colonel Sam Daniels' job is to stop the virus spreading from a small town, which must be quarantined, and to prevent an overreaction by the White House.
Imagine the problem being the White House was going to do too much.
Yeah, I was going to say...
I mean, the thing that that almost happens is bad, obviously, but what a foreign concept.
Yeah, so let's just say like the overreaction that they're referring to is literally wiping the town off the map, literally bombing a U.S. town and killing everyone in it. So that yes, that is a little bit of an overreaction. However,
yes,
you know,
just imagining an overreaction at all from the White House is just crazy.
I know, like I feel like we need some sort of middle ground between what happened in real life and Outbreak. We need somewhere in the middle there. We don't want Trump bombing us, but
well, if this is good news, I don't know if this is ever good news. It's so widespread now and continuing to be widespread that there's no one place you can bomb.
Yep. That is true. Except West Virginia, oddly, does not have an infection. I don't know if you saw that.
I did see that.
West Virginia is coronavirus free.
Yeah, so the governor of West Virginia, while declaring an emergency today, still attempted to say, completely refuses to close anything at all, basically. I
guess he's like, well, hey, we didn't get it yet, so
yeah. Even though there being no confirmed cases, just means that no tests have come back positive and been verified as like being positive tests. I'm like, that doesn't mean that there aren't tons of people in the state that probably have the virus right now, as do in every other state that have just not been tested because we don't have enough tests.
Yeah. As of last week, there was like 60 tests done in New York City as of last week.
We'll get more tests. We're hoping. It looks like we're about to turn a bend where we're starting to get more tests soon.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I know that they're working on like the drive-through ones too, and stuff like that.
Did you hear that the president completely like made up the thing about the Google like drive-through test referral thing?
Yeah. Yep.
Like it's not a thing that they have yet.
Yeah. That was one of like 3 or 4 lies he told during that briefing.
Yeah, which I guess is a low number for him, but anyway.
So Outbreak is one of the few. There's not too many movies like this. There's not too many like pandemic style movies.
There really aren't. I mean, the one everyone's been watching this week is either this one because it's on Netflix or they've been renting Contagion.
Right. Yeah. Of course. Like, so I actually rewatched Contagion this week as well, just because.
I have not seen it. I figure it's a matter of days before I finally do, though.
You should. I mean, I think of the two big ones, Contagion is the more realistic of them, and the way that Contagion plays out feels much more horrifying because it's like in Contagion it starts in China, and the way that it spreads, it has like there's flu-like symptoms. This movie, Outbreak, is much more Hollywood. It's much more. They try to
say that it's an Ebola-like virus, but for whatever the disease, the film ended up putting the disease as, it may as well just be like a completely made-up sci-fi disease.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of hard science behind this movie.
There is not.
There's a helicopter chase. Let's just put it that way. There is an extended helicopter chase scene in this movie. So, we're not working with a heavy realism in this movie. Now, that being said,
did you know that the monkey in this is apparently the same monkey that was Ross's monkey on Friends?
Yeah, this is the Marcel or whatever it was. I can't remember his name.
Yeah. I haven't seen much of Friends. I just remember hearing that since people have been suddenly watching this movie over the past few days.
It's a bad movie.
It's not good. It's not very good at all.
It's pretty bad. I remember I really liked this when I was
It makes
younger,
very little sense.
Yeah, when you watch it now, you're just like, oh boy, this movie is so bad. There's like so much exposition in it, and there's all these characters who feel like they're just straight up talking to the camera. Like the dialogue is so bad, and the helicopter chase alone is
there's a helicopter chase.
You're just like, what is going on here?
There is such a helicopter chase.
It's not very good, but it is entertaining, and it is I think it's a pretty fun movie to get through, even though it I think has a lot of flaws. Mm-hmm.
It's a movie where it seems like continually detached from its own ideas in a way. Like there's just the main problem is that there just feels like a lack of communication between what the direction the movie wants to go in, the direction it does go in. Like they're of separate minds. It feels like it just generally eventually does not have much control over its own ability to evolve the plot. So it just kind of goes in whatever direction it wants to go in, which is how we do get to helicopter chase.
Everything in it feels like it happened out of convenience. Like everything feels so coincidental, and like it had to happen exactly like this for this to play out. And it just, a lot of it felt, I want to say kind of lazy, like just on the script level. I just was not very, there were a lot of kind of eye rolling moments with the dialogue in this. Now, that's not to say that there weren't like good performances. Dustin Hoffman was in this, and he was pretty great in it, even though he had some silly stuff to deal with.
Everyone has some silly stuff in this.
Yeah. Rene Russo's in there playing his ex-wife, who we of course, as soon as she's introduced, we're like, oh well, something's gonna happen. They're gonna get together. They're gonna get to this crisis is gonna cause them to rekindle their love for one another. This movie, it plays out like a disaster film. I mean, that's really how this is structured. This is like a Roland Emmerich film right here.
Yeah, and you've got those like periodic set pieces of like the scene in the theater where one guy is like spreading the virus everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Which is not a bad scene. I mean,
no, I love that scene.
Yeah, it's a pretty well done scene.
I love the theater spreading scene. It's done way better in Contagion, though. Contagion, the way that Soderbergh shoots the spread of it in Contagion, it's like a horror movie. It's so good. And it starts out like he opens the film with it just spreading everywhere, and you just like where he has the camera fixed, you're just like, oh, it's on that mug, it's on that person's hand, it's going here, there it goes, it's going to the next place. And I think it's like, I think Soderbergh saw Outbreak. It was like, I can do better. I can make it better. Because it follows a lot of the same beats. You have like this really large ensemble cast, and they're dealing with this fast spreading virus, this pandemic that occurs in the United States, and the sort of turmoil that it puts the country in. But Soderbergh just does every single beat like so much better than what happens in this movie. And that's kind of the other thing that makes it feel almost like a disaster film, is you have this really large cast of characters who are, largely fairly lifeless for the most part. And you have Cuba Gooding Jr. in there. This is I think an earlier role for him. Is this pre Jerry Maguire?
Yeah,
I think it's
Jerry Maguire was 96.
Yeah. So this is a pre Jerry Maguire Cuba Gooding Jr. and I thought he was pretty good in it. Adding some levity to it. He was a little bit of a comic relief character. I liked his.
Then again, this is a movie where sometimes the dialogue itself is the comic relief.
Oh yeah, big time.
With all that, as you point out, all the heavy exposition with like capital letters.
It's so ridiculous how they're.
This is the important part of about the plot that you should know.
Like I almost felt like they should just be looking straight at the camera when they're talking to us. Yeah, there's very young Patrick Dempsey in this.
Yeah, in a very critical role if you really think about it.
Yeah, Jimbo Scott.
Yeah, what a character name.
Morgan Freeman in there, and then you have Kevin Spacey in there too, who we won't discuss him.
All I'll say is, as many people have pointed out, at least you get to watch Spacey's character suffer terribly.
Yeah, he does get the virus because he's an idiot. Yes. Like,
yes,
you would think that if this is your job, that you would know how to properly.
That's the thing about the characters in this movie. Some of them just have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, they're just lost. They're completely lost. So overall, I think Outbreak is not a good movie, but it is pretty entertaining. It is a little bit long as well. This is over 2 hours long as well.
Probably didn't have to be.
No, I don't think it had to be.
It's not like there's so much important information here that they needed to.
And again, like it's one of those movies where after Contagion comes out, there's no point in revisiting Outbreak, to me at least. It's like, oh, it's like this happens.
That's my general feeling of why no one talks about this movie anymore until the last 10 days.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it doesn't happen a lot in movies where a movie will come out and like theoretically replace another movie where you're just like, well, I don't have to watch that ever again. It happens a lot in video games where like a sequel to a video game will come out and it'll be so much better than like the original or the last one that it'll just completely eclipse it in every way. And you're just like, well, you don't have to go back and play the first one. You just start with this one because it's like the same one, but just way better.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't happen a lot in movies, but I think that this is a situation where if you want to see something, if you're stuck inside and you want to get even more scared than you already are, I'd say watch Contagion.
I will give some credit to the theater scene and also the sequence where they realize that the disease is airborne in the hospital.
That was cool. I mean, how he
yeah
like
the one through the air vent.
Mm-hmm. That was definitely cool. It has its moments for sure. I don't think it's like a complete waste of time or anything like that. I enjoyed revisiting it, but
so this was a Wolfgang Petersen who did go on to make Air Force One, and whose most recent like blockbuster he didn't make a German film a few years ago. So most recent blockbuster. I want to say that his most recent movie I thought was the remake of the Poseidon Adventure,
which I totally forgot existed, by the way.
I saw it on cable a very long time ago, and then I rewatched it a couple years ago. It is bad.
Oh, really? You don't say.
Yeah, I mean, it's not terrible. Okay, it actually might be terrible.
I didn't see it.
The effects were nice. A lot of water.
I used to really love disaster movies. My dad is a big fan of like cheesy disaster movies for some reason.
Oh, my dad too.
I don't know why. Like it's not like
the great dad genre.
It's not typical of him though. Like he usually likes more artistic films, but like that's I guess one of his.
It's a great dad genre.
Yeah, it must be it. It must be it. Mm-hmm. But he really likes the Roland
very
Emmerich
busy,
stuff.
Lots of characters, lots of stuff going on. Yeah, I mean, my dad likes some of like the 70s disaster movies, like Poseidon Adventure, Towering Inferno, and it's like a natural progression with them because they all build to, at the end of that trend in the 70s, one of his very favorite movies of all time, Airplane.
Of course.
Great movie.
Yeah, one that we've talked about a bunch on this show, which is funny because it's not even close to being a 90s movie, but I guess it was that influential.
All discussions about movies eventually lead to Airplane, maybe. It's one of those movies where its influence is such that like any discussion of a movie could hypothetically come back to it sooner or later.
Yeah.
You've got those movies that just kind of put themselves there and they're always like in your peripheral vision. And that's one of them.
Classic. It's a classic.
Mm-hmm.
Undisputed. So I gotta say, like, I was already pretty scared about COVID-19 before watching this. So like I watched this after I watched it a couple days ago. So it was after like kind of the big stuff started going down and the cases started exploding
right before the big stuff started going down.
Oh,
which even then it still feels like the Wednesday or Tuesday or whenever it was still feels like a completely different world than now.
It really does. I feel like all of a sudden over the course of like 2 days, we're now living in a new era. Like this is the new normal that we're living in. And I think that you and I were talking a little bit about this offline, the ramifications that this is going to have, especially in like the movie industry. The film industry is taking a huge hit right now.
Yeah, it feels like it's such a small part of how this is like impacting people, but you think about how it is like the effect it has on the film industry is an example of how it's like impacting every level of our society and our and just every sector of the economy. Yeah,
I mean, we're going to be seeing the ripple effects from this for quite a long time,
years and years.
Because you got to think like all the big releases in the near future have been taken off the calendar.
As I've stressed 1,000 times to various people, like especially on our Slack channel, the next North American wide release as of March 16th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time is Trolls World Tour.
I wouldn't. Maybe it's just
in 3 weeks.
Maybe it's just too late for them to. But I would be.
But then you can't say that because movies coming out this Friday were moved off the schedule.
That's true. Yeah. Did you see First Cow? That they A24 pulled that. That wasn't supposed to be.
But
out.
It was already in release, wasn't it?
I think it was.
It was already out and they pulled it.
I believe so. Either that or they're going to. Maybe they didn't pull it so much as all the theaters are closed, so they're just going to plan a re-release of it.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, you're right. I mean, movies that were coming out as soon as this week have been shelved. Quiet Place Part 2 was supposed to come out this Friday, and that's no longer happening. It's kind of wild, and it makes you think like, okay, so there's now going to be this large gap. We don't even know. Like it could be months that there's going to be this gap where there's no new wide releases in theaters coming out, and all of those movies have to go somewhere, right? Because there's all these movies that they're done, they're ready to go.
Yeah,
so it's gonna push everything else back. Either that, or you're gonna have like this onslaught of movies coming out.
Yeah, might be a weird time, like sometime later, where there's like weeks where like 25 movies are coming out.
Yeah, because they got to squeeze them in, and so it's gonna be a weird time for.
I wonder if some of like the smaller ones that the studios don't care very much about, they might like, if they have a platform for it, they might like kind of limit it and kind of day and date it.
I have a feeling. I mean, so Universal was. Just today, they announced that they're going to be releasing the Trolls movie day and date, and on VOD platforms, and they're also releasing The Hunt, which came out last weekend, or the weekend before last.
It came out this past Friday.
Okay, they're going to release that, and The Invisible Man, and I think Emma, which is also in theaters right now. That came out a few weeks ago, and maybe some other ones that I'm not thinking about right now, but those are all going to be out on VOD. I have to imagine if Universal's taking this step that other distributors will as well.
Yeah, you think that like a company like Disney with its own well-established streaming platform is probably the one that could do that the most effectively.
Yeah, and they did,
since they're already releasing some of their titles to it early.
Yeah, they are releasing Frozen 2 early. I mean, of course, when they announced that, I'm just like, come on. Like, that's not you doing us a solid. That's you.
That was something that was going to happen even if this had not happened in like a few weeks anyway.
They were like, oh, everybody's at home right now. Let's use this as an opportunity. We could probably sell a lot more Disney Plus subscriptions if we give them a new title. Because I don't think they had any like new titles planned for this. Like if The Mandalorian season 2 was going to be out like now during this whole thing where everyone's in quarantine, they probably wouldn't have done the Frozen 2 thing. But they were like, you know what? This is a good opportunity for us. Make some money here. Sell some subscriptions. That's just me putting my like tinfoil hat on, but
yeah, I mean, it's clearly a situation where everyone's responding to it in real time. I mean, it's not like there's much else you could really do about it. And someone was talking about how like completely like cursed and unfortunate like the release history of the movie The Hunt has been, just because it went through so much, like, the like Fox News basically tried to kill its first release date, which they succeeded in, because then Trump started complaining about it. A bunch of people complaining about a movie they hadn't seen. And so then they move it to this week of all weeks. And someone was saying that release date, that movie is just cursed. And I'm like, if there's any movie cursed here, it's like The New Mutants.
Yeah, New Mutants is...
which has now been moved 847 times, I want to say.
Yeah, it was April 2018 that was supposed to come out.
Yeah, actually, this movie might qualify for this podcast because I'm pretty sure it was shot in the 90s.
Yeah, I have been enjoying all of the sort of memes that have been coming out of New Mutants not coming out ever, which is really unfortunate. I was excited for that movie, and now it's like I'm not even sure what's been plaguing that movie, like other than this most recent thing.
Because the other moves have been, by my memory, completely unexplained.
Yeah, there was a rumor that there were reshoots being done. However, I can't remember who directed that, but
Josh Boone.
Oh yeah, Josh Boone.
I mean,
Josh Boone.
He said it's now been 6 years since his last movie, and it's not like he was not working between them. He basically, this movie went into pre-production, basically right after The Fault in Our Stars came out.
It's apparently there were no reshoots done, so it's like what's going on? Is it bad? I mean, like maybe the Disney Fox merger thing, or not merger, but the buyout,
the Disney acquisition.
Yeah, the acquisition. Maybe that.
What a weird thing that happened. I still think of it. What a weird thing that just happened, and everyone just kind of went, okay.
Like we're just accepting it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very strange to think about that. I think about
that was always my prediction, is that as a hypothetical, everyone would not like it, but then as soon as it happened, that we were just going to accept it on site.
I mean, what can you do?
Oh, sorry, 20th Century Studios now.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Oh, yeah, that actually reminds me. There was a release that came out. It was a trailer for something, or a poster or something that we did as a news story, and the 20th Century Studios emailed me and was like, "Can you change it?" Because I put 20th Century Fox in the article.
Like the first time, and I'm sure everyone reacted the same way. The first time everyone saw, at least for me, the first time I saw the 20th Century Studios logo, I kind of like felt a revulsion to it almost. Like revulsion maybe is a strong word. I was just it felt like rejecting it. Like I didn't know what that was.
Yeah, it wasn't right.
Yeah.
And I emailed them back and I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. Like I keep forgetting. And they replied and they're like, yeah, we are too. So it's weird. It's a weird thing. It's a weird time we're living in. We can't go outside. There's no toilet paper. Everybody's buying all the toilet paper for some reason.
Toilet paper.
What's happening?
And like we were talking off mic about this, people buying perishable foods in bulk.
What are you doing?
People buying milk and bread.
What's going on
in bulk?
Here? Stay inside. Don't be idiots. Come on.
Yeah. People just want to feel like they're doing something. And then you go around and you see, I'm sure, you go on went on my Instagram like a couple times this past weekend, and everybody was still out.
Oh yeah. There's people going to like St. Patrick's Day parties and stuff, and
crowded and closed spaces.
From what I understand,
the exact place you're not supposed to be.
Now, as we mentioned before, all the restaurants and bars and stuff are closed now in New York.
Yeah, they're closed now.
But
they're closed
over the weekend.
Everything was open.
Yeah, over the weekend they were all open, and I was seeing things pop up on my Twitter feed of people at the bars and stuff in New York, and it's just like, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
what are you doing?
I think the mantra that's been going around is like people saying like, this is just not like an extended spring break.
Yeah,
this is like, we're telling you to not go anywhere. Like the people who understand this, the people shaping public policy, the experts on this, they are telling us not to go anywhere for a very specific and important reason.
The thing that I like about this is that it's like, I don't know if you saw anything about it, the fact that this is like the Gen Xers like time. This is like their time in the sun or dank apartment, so to speak, because like. All of the millennials and younger people they're still going out, spreading the infection. The boomers are all the ones who are getting it and unfortunately getting very sick from it. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the Gen Xers are just like, all right, I'll stay at home. Like that. I'm cool with that. That's my life.
I guess you're like I don't know, on the millennial Gen X buffer.
I'm an elder millennial, I believe they're called. I think millennials start in 80. The last
they say 80, they say 82, 83. Yeah. I don't know what to say.
I feel more like a Gen X person.
You have a lot of Gen X energy.
Yeah, I think I'm more of that ilk than the millennial.
For my generation, at least, they weren't sure whether people like they knew that people born in the 2000s were definitely Gen Z. They didn't know about people born like towards the end of the 90s. So they didn't know what. So for a while they went back and forth about like whether or not people born in like the later part of the 90s, like me, were millennial or Gen Z. They seem to be settling on the Gen Z side. So I'm an elder Z, or Z if you're British, I guess.
I've also seen that generation referred to as Zoomers.
I like that. That's very funny. I've seen that.
Our final title this month marks the inevitable end to this journey, a dystopian future where the world is a savage wasteland and kangaroo people inhabit the earth. Directed by Rachel Talalay and released on March 31st, 1995. This is Tank Girl.
In the future, the odds of survival are 1,000 to 1.
Sir, we've got action!
And that's just the way she likes it. The critics call Tank Girl the best sci-fi, post-apocalypse comic book movie yet.
Tasty.
4 stars. This movie gives major buzz. Never had this much fun in a movie, and probably never will. Tank Girl starts Friday at theaters everywhere.
Based on the British cult comic strip, a tank-riding anti-heroine fights a megacorporation which controls the world's water supply. So I suppose it will not surprise too many people who have listened to this podcast regularly and kind of heard which movies I do and don't like that I like this movie quite a bit.
Nice.
Adam, what did you think?
There's a certain charm about Tank Girl. This was a movie that when it came out, I didn't see it initially. It was rated R, and as much as I like wanted to see it, I never got around to it until it was, I think, on TV. This is probably the first time I caught this movie, and I've seen it several times since then. I think it's a bad movie, but I still find a lot of charm with it. I still enjoy revisiting it from time to time, but I think it's pretty awful. Like, as far as the, like,
I think
I like what it represents, and I like a lot of the just goofy, over the top nature of it.
Yeah, I mean that I feel like it does have a certain level of control over like how it's practicing being over the top in that sense, and just that ability that I feel like in the movie to kind of create its world around that idea, and I think do it quite well, is just something that I was really, really on board with. It's very colorful, it's vivid, it's got like comic book inserts to it. I mean, I had a really good time with this.
I think that first of all, I think the editing is very poorly done. I didn't.
Sometimes the editing is not great, I guess.
I didn't like the comic book inserts because they were way overused. I mean, they were used,
arbitrarily used, but for some reason I like them.
They were used so much. There were like certain ones where they repeat certain images and stuff too. So it's not like they're just so many of these like interstitial comic book. It felt like it was like a documentary on Tank Girl. It felt like I was watching a Tank Girl documentary where they were doing these like transitions where they're like fast moving the panels around and stuff and twisting them, and like those were transitions between some talking head talking about like how it started as in a fanzine or whatever.
Yeah, like they were so arbitrarily used, but for some reason I didn't mind that.
I'll tell you what, just sort of sticking with the use of that, what I did like, and this is something that I almost never like in movies, is the animation at the end. When they did when the getaway was occurring and and that was all animated. Like normally I look at that as that's a cop out. Like they didn't have enough money to shoot that live action, so they just did some, slap shot crappy animation. But the animation in this was actually really good, and I found that sequence was more interesting than the actual movie and looked better than the actual movie to me. Like, I just want an animated Tank Girl movie now.
I mean, who doesn't?
No, I think that this is like an ongoing thing that I say a lot during this show, but watching this movie, you're just like, yeah, this is 90s. This came out in the 90s because there were so many, so many things. There were so many like pop culture references and tropes of the 90s in this movie that you're just like, well, it just really checks all the boxes. So if you're looking for something that is very quintessentially 90s, this is it. Big time.
Yeah, it is. It is superbly and beautifully 90s. And since it's set in 11 years, since it's set in 2033, but 11 years after the event which causes the apocalypse of the film, so 2022, I now hope that somehow we get pop culturally to a point in 2022 where we could freeze it, put it in a post-apocalyptic setting, and you would have the pop culture of the world of Tank Girl.
That'd be great.
Because what a world!
what a world! Yes. So it is very much like this sort of Mad Max world, but it pulls in a lot of the grungy style that you see in a lot of 90s movies during this time. Like, think of the scene in Hackers, like when they're in that like club or whatever.
I always think about scenes in a Hackers, Adam.
it's like that, like that club where everybody's rollerblading in there, or the scene in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when they go to the Foot Clan hideout. That's like a late 80s movie, but still, it's pretty, I think it applies here.
Finally, another movie in this podcast to add to my movies I'm always thinking about from the podcast alongside. So now alongside The Rage Carry 2 and Hackers and Hocus Pocus will be Tank Girl.
It is, I think about Tank Girl a good bit.
Mm.
It's definitely one that sticks with you. Like you said, I like the vivid use of color in it. The sets were just ridiculously done and over the top. I love the wardrobe changes that Lori Petty has. Like there's like, I don't even understand how it happens. Like from scene to scene, her hair will completely change, and
you gotta love it.
And she's wearing a completely different outfit every scene. And I kind of
best hairstyling Oscar. It was robbed of it. This movie was robbed of that Oscar.
I really loved how that happened, and I think that played into the comic book style. I think that they did a good job, or they did an admirable job in translating the comic strip to live action. I feel like during this time, people still weren't quite sure how to adapt comic books into movies. Like it had been,
they should have all been adapted like this.
This was done like a lot of people were thinking like, oh, we want to make it as close to the comic book as possible. So that's when you have like the panels in this stuff and everything's really bright and colorful, and they try to make it look exactly like the drawings and the artwork in the comics. And sometimes it translates and sometimes it doesn't. I think in this movie, the tone of the Tank Girl story, it actually does fit within that visual style, even if I didn't like the comic book, the overuse of the comic book panel stuff. And
I liked the style and I liked the comic book panel, so I just had a great time.
And I think that we've touched on this before on the show, but this was during a time when a lot of comic book adaptations were happening, but just not superheroes. You have movies like The Crow coming out, and you have all these, because this is during like the indie comic boom, and so you have all of these like sort of darker, more adult themed comic books that are getting adapted into movies, and they're not really touching the superhero stuff because those are not really working in movie form as of 95. But
and how many other movies from 1995 have so much Cole Porter music in it?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, this has quite a good soundtrack. I love the scene. Yes. There's a scene when they play I believe it's a Face-to-Face song during this like sort of car. It was the scene when she's in the tank and she's trying to stop the truck that has the coffins, or not. Well, yeah, I guess they're sort of coffins. They don't know that, but the scene, the car chase shootout scene when they're playing the Face-to-Face song, I thought was really cool. Again, with the editing, it wasn't just the comic book panels. I thought a lot of the just cuts were really rough, and there were certain scenes that happened when like it looked like they left like a little, like maybe 2 frames of another scene in there, because it felt really jarring, and you could see like this split second of this other scene, and it was just really, really sloppy to me. And there was a lot of really bad ADR work in this too, where you can clearly see the person's face and their mouth is not moving. And there were a couple scenes when like they wanted to add in some like one-liners from Lori Petty, and like it didn't match at all. It sounded like it was voiceover, and that was a little bit jarring as well. I thought Lori Petty was a good choice to play Tank Girl, even though she was a little annoying. I think that's just the nature of the character. And then you have Naomi Watts in there in an early role for her as Jet Girl, and she was good. And,
yeah.
And Ice-T as
obviously gotta have Ice-T
as T-Saint. And I don't in a role I don't think people talk about enough, where he plays.
And they should talk about it more.
Where he plays a mutant kangaroo.
Who hasn't?
That's this world. This is a world of mutant kangaroos.
Do you think we'll get mutant kangaroos soon?
I would normally say no, but really, hour to hour, I don't know what's going to happen.
That feels like that doesn't feel like even the top 10 most unexpected things that could happen.
Yeah. I don't know what's going to happen. Like if you asked me in December of 2019, if I thought that we were going to be dealing with a global pandemic in a couple months, I'd be like, no, probably not. But here we are.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I not only mention around the general time we're recording episode is something I might talk about, but that's why I'm mentioning the hour.
Yeah.
Because this is a thing that just moves so fast. So by the time you hear it, the entire tenor that we're taking towards this, where we still feel able to generally talk about things in a lighthearted tone while acknowledging the grave seriousness of it. Who knows what the tone is by the time you hear this, even if it's tomorrow.
Yeah, we were discussing this before the show.
This is going to get a whole lot worse before it gets better.
Normally we take some time to edit, and I'm not in a big rush to get the episode up because most of our episodes are pretty evergreen. You can just listen to them anytime. And
there are episodes in our past of the show where for scheduling consideration reasons we had to record an episode over a month before it came out, and it was fine. But that's just how we had to do it.
But this one we were it might be completely different. Everything that we're talking about now might be completely irrelevant by tomorrow. So we'll try to get this up as soon as possible.
If anything, we should have live streamed this episode.
Yeah, that's really the only way to do it these days. I can't keep up. I think Tank Girl is not a great movie, but I did have a pretty good time revisiting this now. I don't know how long it's been since I've seen it. Years and years. Probably a decade since I've seen this. It's still this movie too. It's under 2 hours, but it's still longer than I would have expected.
It's in a sense, yeah, but I couldn't complain. I kind of did enjoy being in the world of the movie. I thought it handled it quite well, and Malcolm McDowell having a lot of fun with it. Also, as the primary antagonist, I'd somehow be remiss if we didn't round out the primary cast by mentioning him.
Yes, of course. The funny thing is, so he gets in this accident, right, where he requires this amount of cybernetic surgery done, and for maybe 3 or 4 scenes, he's in the scene, but they deliberately don't show his face, and you're just well, man, what's going on? He's gonna be like a monster or something. And he comes back and he's just the same thing. He just has a metal hand. He has a metal arm, and you why would they do that? Why would they deliberately try to shield his face? And I'm wondering, in the script, was he going to be some kind of robot or something? And then they were oh, we can't afford this. We can't afford to do this. So they made him just look normal, but he's a hologram. He has a hologram head for whatever reason. Why did they have to cut off his head and turn him into a hologram? I don't know.
And it turns out Malcolm McDowell is the kind of actor who can really wear a metallic future robot villain arm very well.
Yeah, he can.
There's a lot going on that hand. There's weapons and stuff. Not a lot of actors could, and then you wonder, why hasn't Malcolm McDowell been more part cyborg in more of his films?
It's a great question. I don't know. He pulled it off. I mean, he's a great villain in anything he's in. So he was hamming it up in this, and he played a good villain. He was the owner or CEO or whatever of Power and Water. So in this world, there's this mega corporation that controls all the power and all the water, and they're hoarding it hoarding it for themselves, and everyone else is just dying. All the kangaroo people and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, imagine.
Tank Girl could use a remake, I think.
Yeah.
I think now's a good time to remake Tank Girl and just have it be the same vibe. Have it be that kind of 90s. Like, because, we're starting to see more 90s throwbacks now, and I think it would be really fun to have this
truly the impact of this podcast.
That's what it is, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be fun to have this sort of, zine-inspired 90s Tank Girl come out and just have it be better than this.
And, and of course, well, I think it's a pretty good time as is. But just as I mentioned, I mean, everything you didn't like, I thought there was just the right amount of. So you thought there was too much, I guess, and I thought there was just enough. And, imagine even just a distant sci-fi abstract concept as necessary resources being held in the hands of a few powerful people who refuse to let anyone else have it, even in times of complete desperate need, and guard it villainously.
I know we're getting back onto the coronavirus topic here, but the whole, WHO having the tests and the president being, not accepting the tests back in January, I think that is baffling. What is going on here?
Of course. Yeah. I mean,
so that's Tank Girl.
Yeah. We're in a bit of a mood today, as I'm sure everyone is.
It's definitely not your typical show. It's weird, watching late night shows that have no audience.
No audience.
Yeah.
No audience.
That's
I saw some of John Oliver's show. Apparently, not only did he not have an audience, he couldn't record in the studio he normally records in because it was someone who works there did test positive for COVID-19. So they taped the show without an audience in this blank void of it's a nondescript stage with just a bright white background.
Yep.
It's kind of eerie.
It's very bizarre with no audience, because at first you're just that's not that big of a deal. It won't play that much of a role. But in comedy shows, late night talk shows, they rely on laughs, right? So you have a show where John Oliver's cracking jokes left and right, and there's no laughter at all. It's just dead silent. So I'm thinking it's awkward for us to watch that, but it's probably way more awkward for them. Because I'm just imagining, because I saw that episode too, and he was saying that he had a very a bare bones crew. So he probably had a boom mic guy and a camera guy and maybe a producer.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's could be it, in the whatever room they were in. And so he's sitting there, there's probably a teleprompter and a camera in front of him, and he's doing the show, and no dead silent in the room. I think I don't know.
No feedback, no energy.
I mean, he crushed it. He did an amazing job, but I'm just imagining if it were me, I think I would have a really hard time just performing like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thought I saw some of the show that Colbert did the other day, and he thought it did pretty well. I think what he made it sound like, I didn't see the whole thing, was that the show that aired was the rehearsal, so it was kind of just looser anyway. It was just mostly him interacting with the crew directly. So I guess that's how you kind of give it some kind of back and forth energy.
Yeah, I didn't see it, but I saw on Twitter people saying that Samantha Bee's show is similar, where she would break character more during the the show.
I'll have to see that then.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just again
just seeing the small ways that it's impacting just parts of our society or culture that you wouldn't think about, and just seeing this is filtering down at every single level, and it's just there at every level.
Yes, it's very strange, and I think it seems like it's only going to get stranger from here, folks. It's only going to get weirder.
Like I said, that's what all the experts have been saying. This gets worse before it gets better. This is not.
On that note, I think we can.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, I guess we just close the show off here. As I said before we recorded, I did want to. I'm sure you've all heard this 1 billion times, but it bears repeating. Like from the just reading this off the CDC's website, as always. Wash your hands with soap and water for 20 seconds, and in general, stay home, practice social distancing. We all have to do our part here.
Absolutely. And I love the term social distancing, and I'm going to be using it all the time, even after this pandemic is over. My life is based on social distancing. I mean, before and after this, my life will be based on social distancing.
Same.
I think that's going to do it for this month. I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy during this turbulent time, and I thank you very much for listening. You can send us your questions and topics to 90s@filmpulse.com. And follow us on Twitter and Facebook at 90spod. Also, please remember to give us a review on iTunes. If you get a moment, that would be awesome. For Ken Baker, my name's Adam Patterson. This has been Saved by the 90s.
Bye, everyone, and wash your hands.